world, corporate trolling in social media is on the rise. Many organizations have shifted their social strategies to be focused on becoming professional trolls in order to gain momentum and even go viral. But is this really the direction we should be heading? While we all strive to do social media differently, when do you know if you've gone too far? And is there an ethical line not to cross as a brand? And what even is corporate trolling in the first place? Here to discuss it all with me today is one of the most energetic and enthusiastic leaders I've ever had the privilege to work alongside, Nish Veer, Director of Growth Marketing at Media Monks. Nish, welcome to the show. Are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
I feel very radically transparent. Thanks, Jen. Great to be here.
Great to have you. And, we really go way back. And I don't say that to many guests. And when we were kind of brainstorming on the topic, you had me at corporate troll, right? Because we're all familiar with social media trolls. Maybe some of us have even been those trolls, but corporate trolling, what is it?
Well, it's a weird one to kind of pin down exactly what it is, but for anyone who's spent enough time on social media, especially on Twitter, I've haven't seen too much of it on Instagram, a bit of it on Facebook, but on Twitter it just seems rife because it's a in that exact moment style social media. It's a get in there as fast as you can style platform today. God knows what Elon's going to do with it tomorrow, but today it's very much a very fast paced platform where it feels like the news doesn't have to be right. It just has to be the fastest to be on social media. So on there, corporate trolling is what I'm putting it down as corporates basically trying to be cool with the cool kids on Twitter so that people listen to them, not necessarily about their products, but just their social media platform.
Okay. We're gonna unpack that more, right? Because there's a lot to unpack there. Um, but you mentioned, right, it's in an effort for brands, really what I'm hearing, to try to relate to their audiences, right? And be interesting on social media, which any social media manager, any marketer, anybody who is doing social as a profession knows it's not easy, right? The amount of content, the type of content to keep an audience engaged, to go viral, right? Back in the day, that was a huge, I think, goal. I think today maybe less, but you can keep me honest there. But could you give us some examples, maybe of some current day brand trolling or corporate trolling, that just to kind of solidify what exactly you're talking about?
There's loads of examples today. There wasn't so many even 5-10 years ago, but today there's so many. I think the most common one I'm seeing, and a lot of them are coming out the UK, so apologies to our friends in the US and even Australia and other parts of the world, but if you follow these accounts from the UK or just decide to look them up, one account will be Ryanair. You may not have ever heard of it, but it's kind of like a budget airline out of the UK. I think it's out of the UK. But basically, they've given away with the usual social media of, hey, we have these cheap flights going to Greece, and they only cost $49.95. Sign up here, and that is what old social media used to be about. Just get our message out on the platform where our audience is, and give them our deals, and leave it at that. That's 100% not what they do, and they just take the mickey out of people to gain traction. So their latest target, I've forgotten his name already. My goodness, the guy who does the carpool karaoke, the English
Oh,
comedian,
James, he
James
got in trouble with the
Corden.
restaurant. Yes.
Yeah, James Corden. Okay, so the restaurant, that moment, we'll pick on that immediately. So straight away, if people are watching this at some time and they don't know what we're talking about, so James Corden's a comedian. He's already been rejected out of the UK. He's a comedian in the US, and he was in a US restaurant. He was very rude to the staff. And the owner of the restaurant put out a statement on social media saying, with a big X, or basically saying, James Corden is banned. He's not coming to our restaurants ever again. And apparently he redacted that like 24 hours later. But anyway, it became big news. Ryanair, the airline, jumped on this and got his face and put a red X through his face saying, Ryanair's banned from flying on James Corden's banned from flying on Ryanair ever again. And just put it up there and just left it. That was their entire post. Not what you would imagine from a multi-million dollar airline, but it gained so much traction. It was massive post to them, probably hundreds of thousands of likes and retweets, and the impressions would be through the roof. They then followed it up when James Corden was found to be basically plagiarizing the material of Ricky Gervais, another UK comedian. And then these guys are very smart. The Ryanair guys posted a fake picture of James Corden's fake passport, but they wrote on their Ricky Gervais as the first and last name, and the comment was, "You can't fool us, James. We know what you're up to," sort of thing. And again, they're just getting on the most current topics, what's being talked about, what's trending, get some very clever comedy behind it, and post it up. It's probably not offending anyone, especially when you're a comedian. You're not going to get overly offended by it. But just very clever work. Nothing that you would imagine that a normal corporate account would do. So hopefully it gives a bit of an example of what I'm calling corporate trolling in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, what I find so fascinating about these use cases or these examples, if you will, of corporate trolling, right? Ryanair, we, as B2B marketers, a lot of us are, that's B2C. I've seen it again on Twitter, KFC, I think, had some jokes. Sometimes brands are speaking to one another within their own jokes. Or
McDonald's did one recently. They just posted, ooh, like 200 characters of O's, and no one knows what it means, but suddenly Coca-Cola and Sprite and all sorts of people are replying like, "Are you okay?" Back to McDonald's. So anyway, sorry, carry on.
Right? Yeah. Well, so this is exactly why I think it's interesting to bring up on Radically Transparent, which, right, we talk a lot about B2B marketing, and I think for years and years and years, B2B marketers have always been 10 steps maybe behind their B2C counterparts, and B2B has often become known as B2 boring. But what I do see in this space, I do see B2B organizations taking a bit of this approach as well. If you go on LinkedIn, sometimes you have corporate brands commenting on whether it's competitors or whether it's partners, and the brands are starting to have a bit of fun. So I challenge sometimes with B2B marketers, what's interesting, right? We all find these kind of corporate trolls and these examples, they're funny, right? They're witty. I right? Like, I'm horrible on Twitter because I'm the least witty person you could imagine, but it's funny. And if we can, as B2B marketers, right, take a peek at this kind of new wave of, right, does the content even have to be, right, about our product? And we'll get into that, but how, like, right, if our goal is increasing engagement and impressions and brand awareness, right, there is like a fine art between, okay, let's post about our product, let's be that B2 boring kind of content that we all know and love and have been ingrained into, with a mix of this kind of new, interesting, is this even relevant, but it's funny, to gain kind of the trust of your buyers or get a laugh out of what is oftentimes a very serious strategy or industry. And I was doing my due diligence. I was looking a little bit about you, Nish, and you are famously known in our industry as someone who is, I think someone described you as ridiculously efficient, and somebody who believes.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I was like, you know what, that, but you,
I've
like,
been called worse, so that's good. I like that.
You've been described, right, as that, right, there is no box. And I think that that's such a powerful way to approach marketing, right? Like, we always hear think outside of the box, but if there's no box, right, where are the limits? So I've got to ask, what is keeping you up at night professionally in terms of social or the trolling or what we're seeing from these brands and their social strategies today?
Yeah, well, trolling definitely does not keep me up at night, so I'll leave that one there. It's quite interesting. So a little bit of my background for people who don't know me at all. I did actually run Liverpool FC's social media for the ANZ region for 6 years, which was a dream come true as a English-born boy with Scouse brothers and Liverpool-loving dad and all. Anyway, but the main point is I had to learn the hard way how to handle trolls, because you're looking after a sports page with hundreds of thousands of followers on it, and I'm posting multiple times a day, and of course you're going to get barraged by other fans who like to rip into you, and it's not you, right? It is a brand, and people have their opinions, and people will always favor or not favor, and you just get on with it. That's a simple rule. Just get on with it. It doesn't matter. And I think what people have done is that they've taken their social media strategy and moved in that direction. So I'll stop diverting away from your question. Your question's, what keeps me up at night? But what keeps me up professionally, and there's two things really, is what's going to be next. And I think everyone thinks about that because you can't predict the future, but you can create the future. And so that moves on to my second point of how do you break through the noise? And it's always going to be, and people break through the noise by doing this in the first place. And I can give you a bit of history as to a friend, Paul Rogers, as to how he did that. He took on that challenge and broke through and turned it into a genre of social media, basically. But I've spent a huge amount of my career doing sales, and my big mantra is there's whoever I'm talking to, I have to imagine that they're getting 100 emails from people just like me, or 100 phone calls from people just like me every single day. How do I break through the noise? So as a corporation, then, whatever you're doing, whatever kind of marketing or sales or social media plans, whatever you're doing, how are you going to break through the noise to be different? And are you going to overstep some boundaries? And is it a problem if you do overstep boundaries? And I think that's where businesses are really going, because business is changing every single day, and you need to be more radically transparent in what you're doing in order to be different and be heard, basically, today. So that's really what keeps me up. What can you do different to break through the noise and be different? And that keeps me up a lot.
Listen, you're not alone in that at all. And I think many of us can relate, and especially on social. I mean, I think we've seen, right, social is just a flood of content. And even, right, if we, given again that B2B example, I remember when I used to need a product, or when I used to need to find research on something, a service product, right? I would go to LinkedIn, I would read some content that was popping up in my feed. I wasn't overwhelmed in any way. I was completely felt very focused and looking and finding what I needed. And today, sometimes when I open my LinkedIn account, I am bombarded with all sorts of noise. Not all of it is, irrelevant. Some of it's very interesting, but it's definitely takes me a lot longer to find what I'm looking for. And it is harder, I think, to know when you're doing your research, right? What is credible, what's not credible. What is this person trying to say? In some instances, I see LinkedIn has taken also, right, we see a lot of like, be human. I think that like what 2020, that was like, everybody needs to be human. And LinkedIn has almost morphed its content as well to keep up almost with this changed new world of how we do social to stay relevant, right? And we're seeing, right, as you mentioned, some brands, we're seeing employer branding taking over social media strategies, which is interesting. And I know I like seeing what other brands are up to internally, but it doesn't necessarily add any value to my purchase decisions at all times. Maybe I'll say, oh, that looks like a cool group of people I'd like to work with. But it's definitely changing. I think the next question that I have for you, and you kind of addressed it in what's keeping you up, but that line of like, what's too far? I mean, do you have a moral compass in this, as someone, right, who there is no box, but like, yeah, there kind of maybe are some lines. What is your moral compass when you're trying to break through that noise, or where do you feel the line is like, we're here and then it's someone's gone there?
It's unfortunately it's a very difficult line to navigate if you aren't read, and I'll put it down as I'll use it as read. You have to read into how the world is shifting, because the absolute worst thing you can do today is offend, and your brand will be diminished if you are known as an offender, as a person who goes out to purposely offend people. And I think that's where people get a bit mistaken when it comes to trolling versus corporate trolling, is that trolls, normal, everyday human, nobody trolls, want to offend. That is their aim. They want to get a rise out of you. They want to get you upset, and they will say any kind of obscure, dirty, whatever thing to really make you feel bad. While a corporate troll is more trying to get your interest and trying to make you stop and go, who are you? What did you say? That's really funny. I might give you a follow because I want to see more of that. You don't get that from pitching your latest server that you've just built and released, or in the case of Paddy Power, your latest betting odds or something like that. That will solve a very small niche group of people, but it won't get the general public going, I'm going to follow you and I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to do whatever, under the knowledge that most of them may not turn into customers, but they will know who you are. They will like your brand for whatever reason, and they will take it to the next point. So that line I'll go back to is your original question. Offensive stuff. You have to be clever. The person. It kind of brings to another point I was going to bring up later, but social media has turned from the people are talking to the brand to they're talking to the admin. So people recognize there is a human behind the brand who is the admin, and that admin will nearly always stay completely and utterly anonymous, because it could be a team of people, but they will refer to them as the admin. Give that admin a raise is like a common statement sort of thing when something's good. It's also a get out quick by the brand, so they can say, I'm sorry for the offensive post we put up, we've sacked the admin. It could be the same person. They just put them through training and put them back. But that anonymous, superhero or supervillain is the person that will drive the message behind the scenes. So that line needs to be respectful, needs to be owned. And that admin that you hire to be able to be the person who does put out those messages and you put your trust in to do the right thing, they should be intelligent enough to know what is the line when it comes to offending people. You can offend people politely, you can offend people in a nice, obviously joking way, but the general rule is just don't go near there. Be smart enough to be clever without having to offend on social media as often. That's the difference between online media comedy and actual stand-up comedy. You can't be the same thing.
100%. Social media managers, no pressure. And this is exactly why I fail on Twitter, right? I've always been that person that I try to be witty, and then people are like, why are you upset? I'm like, oh, like, or why are you being mean? I'm like, oh, I was trying to be, and right, I don't have that talent in terms of the wit. So huge shout out to all who do. It's definitely an art form. Brands, B2B brands, right? We kind of hit on it earlier. We're seeing it getting mixed up on LinkedIn in terms of the content that's being spilled out from employee advocates, from social media managers, from the admin, from the brands, wherever. Do B2B brands even need to be informative anymore on social media? I mean, in your opinion, right? If you're a B2B brand, maybe on, I don't know, I'll throw out like Instagram or even Twitter, right? Because there's so many different channels to express yourself, and your brand might have multiple personas on different channels. But I mean, is there any value in some of those channels to being informative?
There is, but I think the main message is that what businesses need to do, they have to think very carefully which way they want to go. Because the number one thing you can't do is when you decide to go down a certain path like this, that you just try it for 2 or 3 days and then you stop. That isn't effective. In any kind of campaign or strategy, that's never going to be effective. When it comes to B2B, I think what people are clicking onto, and the brands that do it really well, and this isn't anything new for any marketers listening to this, you're not doing B2B, you're doing human to human. It doesn't matter who your end person is. You're not talking to another business. You're talking to another person who may work for a business. And so you're trying to get the person's interest. And that person you may get interested in could be the CEO or the buyer, the CIO, whoever it is. And for them to simply get sparked by your message and your campaign and what you're trying to do, that will then start building up their sort of how they think of you as a brand in a positive or negative way. And the people who do it well, and the people who actually spark their interest and get them excited, when you give them a phone call afterwards and go, hey, I'm from, I'm going to throw out a name, Ryanair.
Just gonna throw it out there.
Yeah, they may chuckle and they just go, haha, great to hear from you. When in the past, without ever seeing those funny jokes they put on Twitter or social media, wherever they put it on, they may have gone, I've got a Qantas frequent flyers thing, don't talk to me ever again. But at least you might get that little step in the door to go somewhere. And they may even want to talk to you about that because it might be something they want to do themselves. So you never know where it could lead. But sparking that person's interest could be the difference between winning a massive contract and not. So it's just something to think about.
Touche, touche. Couldn't have said it better myself. A few more questions for you before I let you
Sure.
go. Um, you mentioned right B2B brands that are doing it well. I want to play a little game.
Oh no.
In your opinion, can you give some brands that you think are doing it well, refreshing, wild, or weird?
Do I have to say B2B because it's
You can switch into B2C and we can definitely take some notes. Feel
can I
free.
say the B2C ones that are doing it bad?
Yeah,
Because
let's
that'll be good.
yeah,
Let's
let's
start
get
there because
some
that
weird and wild. Yeah, weird, wild, and bad.
because it's so easy to spot the bad ones who are trying too hard. Take a look at Domino's UK and see an actually a good example. Now, who are Domino's Pizza UK's biggest competition in the UK is Pizza Hut. Look at Pizza Huts. For anyone there, get on your phone, go to Twitter, go to Pizza Hut UK. I'm not sure which one, what their account is. And I hope I'm not ruining anybody in this particular case, but they're clearly trying to be like Domino's. Pizza Hut UK is their handle, but it just falls flat. And for an account which has 75,000 followers, you see the engagement rate is super small. So you'll notice the difference. Go side by side between Domino's and Pizza Hut. Domino's, they're talking about the three lines team. They're talking about I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, a TV show. you know, they're basically one in maybe every 20 tweets is about pizza. Everything else is talking about Matt Hancock being on I'm a Celebrity. like it's the strangest thing. But then you get a Pizza Hut and it's all like they're trying to jump on trends, but just doing it in a really dry way. And they get like 8 likes when Pizza Hut's getting an average of about 50 to 100 sort of thing. So, I mean, Domino's is getting the higher amount. So it's a strange conundrum seeing those two battle it out online. And I'm kind of reviewing the both and going, this is odd behavior. so I'll put it that way.
What I like about
Another,
analyze that, I
sorry.
have to just cut in. What I like how you just analyze that, right? Even as a B2B brand, if you take your competitors and do what Niche just did, right, to your own social and, put it side by side and take a look and really put an objective hat on, see like what are your competitors up there? What's their cadence? What are they talking about? And I think what you just did between Pizza Hut and Domino's is a great exercise for B2B marketers to also put into play.
100%. A big thing I tell people, because I've got a little social, my own personal Twitter account is doing okay. It's got like 21,000 followers, but it gets an
Same.
expression. Yeah, it gets impressions of around 4 million a month. And so that's a lot more than most other accounts which have 50 to 100,000 things. I didn't do it by looking at the really big accounts and going, I'm going to do what they're doing. Because there are certain evolutions you need to go through before you get to that point. And by the time people get to that point, they've already changed tack 2 or 3 times. And they're like, I'm so big, I need to change and start doing this. Well, I've kept it the same. And my whole methodology was I'm going to show people who I am, my face. I'm going to tell from my own opinions. I'm not going to change opinion to match the crowd. This is my opinion. I don't care what you think. it's basically my motto. Uh, and the third rule I always go by is I can turn off social media at any point and it won't have any impact on my life. And so I treat social media the exact same way because it's a bit of fun. If you take it too seriously and you push it too hard, it's just like music. If anyone's ever done music before, it's so much fun to just get an instrument or sing a song and have fun with it. But then if someone comes up to you and goes, I'm going to pay you $500 to make me a song, you're going to hate every moment of it. you're going to be there overthinking it and go, oh my God, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't, it's exactly the same methodology. So treat it like that and you may get a huge amount of success. So those are just my tips and things about growing your own methods and growing your own personal social media brand, if you want to put it that way. Another one I want to bring up is like Burger King in the UK. Ugh, they had a horrible moment. They thought they would be cool and trendy and put out one big bold statement, and then follow it up with like quote with tweets underneath it which explained it. But their big bold statement was, "Women belong in the kitchen."
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah, and they left it up for I don't know how long. 1 minute is too long, but it went up for a while. Then they put in the explanation. It was actually quite a wholesome explanation underneath it. We want to empower and all this kind of yeah, great story underneath. But people only see the front page, and that was the front page. There's an old saying in search optimization. You know, the best place to hide a dead body is on the second page of Google. This is the same thing with tweets. Like, best place to hide a dead body is under subquote, the subtweets, whatever you want to say. So, yeah, just don't do it, people. It's just a bad idea. And then I don't know. There's just a few. Like I talked about Ryanair before, but then I talked about that line that you cross. They just did one. So there's a young, and I'm a Liverpool fan, but this player, Jadon Sancho, plays for Manchester United, and he didn't make it into the England World Cup squad. Ryanair, trying to be funny, came out with, they mentioned him, and they go, "We'll still fly you somewhere," with blowing a love heart towards him. And it's just like, guys, he's a kid, you know? He's like 20 years old. His dream's just been shattered, and you're trying to get a cheap laugh out of it. Even as a Liverpool fan, I'm a bit like, that's not cool. That's not funny. You're just trying to be clever at that point. So that's where I feel that's the sort of, you're not doing it right. No matter if you're B2B, B2C, just come on, be a bit cleverer about what you're trying to say.
Be clever.
Does that answer your question without answering any B2Bs? I purposely avoid it.
No, listen,
there's so many.
There's so many. And I think, again, hearing these examples and going back to the strategy or going back to the exercise that you shared with us by just placing brands or competitors or who you want to be like next to your own account side by side, and really doing your work on understanding those accounts, what's funny, what's not, I think, right? And it goes back to what you said earlier, being well read, right? Doing your research. If you're on social, if you're seeing what's working, what's not, right? Take note. Definitely answer the question. So I have my last question for you. It's my absolute favorite. What's one thing you can share about yourself that we cannot learn about you from your LinkedIn profile?
I don't need a sip of any kind of alcohol to go wild in a karaoke bar. I'm a huge fan of karaoke.
You mentioned earlier, right? If someone pays you to write a song, good luck. Can we be expecting an album, or has someone paid you to be writing a song?
My original, I'm in, business and media or whatever now. I was wanting to be a musician, and it took me 1 year to work out no one would ever pay money to listen to me. So I had at least the self-awareness, I'm just not good enough, so I'm going to save myself and just stay to karaoke bars for the rest of my life, and I'm very happy doing that.
Well, Nish, we all know now, if we want to connect with you in terms of anything marketing, anything social, we'll have to head to your favorite karaoke bar to sing about it and catch up. But in all seriousness, if anyone does want to speak more about corporate trolling, take a look at what you're up to. Where's the best place to connect, to follow you, and to be in touch?
Best place, if you want to talk serious business, go on to LinkedIn. So that'll be Nish Veer, NISHVEER. Shoot me an email. I'm at nish.veer@mediamonks.com, here in the ANZ region, so beware of our weird time zones. And Twitter, I'll save that for myself because I keep that world very separate. So, happy to talk about it as much as you want.
There you go, Nish. Thank you so much for getting radically transparent with me, and I look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Jen. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast, brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.